you want people to understand you, you have to be able to communicate how you truly feel. Only by sharing ideas can we come to better understandings with each other, but because communication is messy, reaching that understanding won't come about without struggle. But that struggle will always be worth it to connect with the people you love the most. This is the message of Kimi ni Todoke. In the same way Sawako must properly express her thoughts to create an understanding, so too must a storyteller properly convey what they're trying to say in order to reach the audience. Stories are about communicating ideas, transferring from one brain to another. How to effectively communicate those ideas is a lot of what theories of storycraft are attempting to teach you. It's all a language of its own. When we draw parallels between pieces of media, it's also a form of communication. When recommending something, it's a way to convey the themes and ideas behind a new piece of media quickly. But this comes with its downsides as well. Honey Lemon Soda is often proclaimed to be the successor to Kimi ni Todoke, and in drawing those parallels, it calls attention to the differences. Fans of Kimi ni Todoke who decided to give it a chance expecting the same level of quality ended up disappointed by it. Why is that? What makes them similar and what makes them different? Why do so many people feel Honey Lemon Soda falls flat while Kimi ni Todoke remains one of the most beloved and iconic shoujo titles? While Honey Lemon Soda does have similar elements in its story that Kimi ni Todoke absolutely handles better, I want to acknowledge the ideas Honey Lemon Soda has behind it and the potential for that depth to come through. Kimi ni Todoke is all about communication. All the characters, the arcs, and conflicts tie into and revolve around this theme, which is embodied in its title. To reach you, to let my feelings reach you is the implication. The theme acts as a North Star. When everything connects back to the main theme, it helps keep the story focused and ties all the elements together. For a piece of media, the more interconnected everything is, the more powerful it becomes. The more you infuse the theme into every element, the more satisfying those connections become. For Sawako, her goals and struggles are all related to the theme of communication. Because she struggles to communicate, she has a hard time making friends, and despite her reputation, she still wants to get along with everyone. There's an invisible wall between her and her classmates, and it isn't until she starts to interact with Kazehaya that she begins to break through this wall. So what about Honey Lemon Soda? Despite its similar elements to Kimi ni Todoke, Honey Lemon Soda doesn't really focus on communication as a theme as much. It's more about healing from past hurt, undoing the harmful mindsets that came from it, and finding the people who will love you for who you are. Changing yourself to find better opportunities and be able to handle situations the world throws at you. There's also themes of self-worth, friendship, sheltering, reconciliation, rules and freedom, and finding your independence. A good theme is more than a topic. It's a question that the show will attempt to explore through the characters' differing perspectives. If we take the topic of change and the context of Ishimori's experience, we can ask things like, who are you changing for? Is it for yourself or for others? If you're changing for the sake of someone else, is that a good or a bad thing? Do you even need to change in the first place? How you tackle these questions is what is going to make your story unique, where you can add meaning and personal perspective. With a character like Ishimori, there's so much that you can explore and different takes that you can have. Now, the important question for you as a storyteller is, how do the events happening in the story help answer the questions that are brought up? Ishimori is starting from the ground up to make new relationships and doesn't really know how to do that. Her isolation from being bullied left her stunted in terms of social growth. If change is related to how she interacts with her peers, learning how to navigate the social culture and relationships is one of the steps she has to take for her growth as a person. So it's important to build that aspect into the story. I want to first look at what Kimi ni Todoke does in its first episode to introduce us to the story and characters and how it's structured around its themes. A big part of the series is Sawako's battle against other people's misinformed perception of her, so it only makes sense to start with those misconceptions. A few students are discussing the rumors about Sawako that she must have spiritual abilities, can talk to ghosts, and the like. We start with an outside perspective, which will then be subverted once we start to learn more about her. With the line, for some reason, we know she doesn't fully understand how people are perceiving her, and as further rumors flesh out her reputation more, she comes across as a bit oblivious. Even if you don't know who Sadako from The Ring is, you still understand how it impacts people's perception of her by how the visuals portray her. They're judging based off of appearances and what others have said about her, and when they encounter her, they don't realize what she's trying to do, but the audience is clued into her true nature. The rumors about her plus her appearance have warped their perception to the point of her name being misrepresented. One trick that it uses is having an inner Sawako that can be as expressive as her thoughts are. It shows her full range of emotions, but also that she's unable to translate those emotions to her face, and when she tries to, it doesn't come across in the way she intended. The narration is enveloped in the lens through which Sawako sees the world. She is shown as optimistic through how she describes things. She's earnest, but there's a fundamental misunderstanding between her and her peers about why she acts the way she does. This is characterization, the displaying of personality traits, mannerisms, and choice of words that all contribute to conveying who a character is. The contrast of the visuals and Sawako's inner monologue work together to paint a fuller picture of what's actually going on. This includes Kazehaya, whom she admires because he's able to achieve what she wants with ease.
Kazehaya-kun wa watashi to seihantai. Itsuka Kazehaya-kun mitai na hito ni naritai na.
And so, in the first 3 minutes, we learn what she wants, the type of person she wants to become, and the person who inspires her to do so based on the contrast between the two of them. He's special to her because he treats her the way no one else does. We understand the foundation of who Sawako is that we can now further build upon. The episode then follows a 3-part success and failure structure, showing her wins amongst the opposition, with Kazehaya supporting her. Kazehaya is the one who first gives her the opportunity to clarify and clear up any miscommunication, and through this, she gains the confidence to express her true feelings and communicate them to others. So she continues to make successful attempts at this, and by the end, she feels like she knows how to clear up misunderstandings. She uses this newfound ability to try and protect Kazehaya, but is actually misunderstanding what he wants, which shows us that while Sawako is growing, she still has a ways to go. Her beliefs about herself and her place in society now become an obstacle for her making connections with others. Then we get Kazehaya's perspective of the backstory, and we learn why he pays so much attention to her. Because he treats her with the same respect he does everyone else, he's able to unlock the sides of her she normally doesn't show to anyone else. The episode is capstoned with Kazehaya basically doing a title drop, which simultaneously concludes the arc for the episode and sets up the main thematic question to be expanded on as the story progresses.
そのまま大きくなった今のこの気持ちがいつか君に届くだろうか
Now that we have an idea of what each series is trying to do, let's begin comparing some of the similar elements. Both series have a focus on establishing friendship as a means of growth. One similarity between the two leads is how they view themselves in the grand scheme of things. They tend to put themselves down for the sake of others, though it manifests in slightly different ways. Sawako believes that by associating with her, it will affect people's reputation, and if people are hurting because of her, then she should stay away from them. For Ishimori, she spent years having it endlessly drilled into her of how she's not worth anything, so she uses herself to make others look better because she believes herself to be unappealing. After an encounter with her old classmates who adamantly deny being friends with Ishimori, she contemplates if Miura would be embarrassed to be seen with her.
Miura-kun wa watashi to iru no hazukashiku nai no kana?
This is but a small part of Ishimori's characterization, and makes sense for a character of her background to have, almost to more of an extent than Sawako. In an environment where bullying runs rampant, people will often not get involved with whoever's being bullied for fear of also being targeted. In Sawako's case, it's the fear of contracting some sort of curse or other calamity upon oneself. But the parity of this aspect between her and Sawako is not as significant a one as one would think. Outside of this precise moment, it's never really brought up again in a significant way, at least not in the specific context of reputation and embarrassment. For it to have such an effect on her to the point where she views herself in such a negative light, you'd think we would have a more impactful character-defining moment where it truly sinks in that her new classmates don't think of her that way, that they're not embarrassed to be around her. The first part of Sawako's character arc is entirely related to this idea of reputation. It carries weight because we see the effect of how the students' treatment of her affects others. They tease Kazehaya for spending time with her during the courage test, and make going on a date with her be the punishment game for failing to finish. Because she's perceived as strange and otherworldly, they don't seem to regard her as a person with thoughts and feelings. Later on, rumors develop around Kazehaya and her friends about how she's using them. There are legitimate consequences for getting involved with Sawako. And that's what makes it all the more powerful when Kazehaya and the others decide that they don't care and want to be around her anyway because they legitimately like her. Each of the characters have moments of witnessing her true personality, exhibiting unique reactions to it, and falling for her charms. For example, in the time Kazehaya spends with Sawako during the courage test, she talks about why she likes the night. This further characterizes Sawako and allows Kazehaya to interact with her positive qualities, so it makes more sense why Kazehaya cares so much about Sawako. Because we don't get much focus on this aspect in Honey Lemon Soda, it doesn't seem to be that important to Ishimori in the grand scheme of things, as it's quietly forgotten about and we move on to other inner conflicts without really resolving it. And Takamine warning to her about her staying away from Miura has less to do with damaging Miura's reputation as it does protecting Ishimori from those with ill incentives. That's not to say that Honey Lemon Soda has to focus on this specific element to be a good story, but I do have to wonder, if it's not going to go anywhere, what was the point in bringing it up? In both series, there's a moment of "we were already friends." Both girls aren't used to people being nice to them, and they don't know how people normally make friends. They have the idea that there's this invisible threshold that needs to be crossed or otherwise said out loud. It isn't natural for them to hang out with people in an organic way, so they have to implement other methods, not realizing that the threshold is much easier to cross than what they thought. Once everything with the bullies is resolved, the time comes when they have to change seats, and Ishimori, in a panic, afraid things will have been for naught if she doesn't make the friendship official, asks Ayumi to be her friend, to which Ayumi is a bit perplexed, and realizing in Ishimori's case she does need to spell it out for her, confirms the friendship. It's a fine moment, cute even. It's a mark of Ishimori being able to put herself out of her comfort zone and is her first step in making that connection with others, her first real friend. But when you look at Kimi ni Todoke in comparison, well, there is no comparison. It's not a fair match. Sawako has a whole arc of learning what it means to be friends, struggling through her beliefs about herself and her place in the social hierarchy, her kindness and empathy making her push her friends away for their sake, putting their needs above her own based on her misguided assumptions. It's the first major conflict to happen now that a baseline has been established. Lots of stories will use misunderstandings for the sake of drama, but the way I see it, there's intention behind Kimi ni Todoke's utilization of it. This arc serves a huge purpose in exploring the theme of communication. However frustrating it is to watch, miscommunications do happen in real life, and what happens when you throw someone who's only just learning how to express herself to others into the trenches of informational warfare? Untruths, rumors, gossip. These are the biggest weapons in a social setting like this. It's the dark side of communication. With malintent, it becomes a weapon to divide. Alone, she doesn't pay much attention to the rumors. She's always had them, and so she's used to it. As long as she is the sole target, they don't really bother her. But now that others are involved, the stakes are raised significantly in her mind. Both sides are working off of incomplete information, and by not properly communicating, they end up unintentionally hurting each other. Chizuru and Ayane are afraid Sawako doesn't like them because they overheard her saying they're not her friends, and they do the right thing by starting the conversation. But thinking those fears are being confirmed, don't want to hear her say it because it would hurt too much. It highlights the danger of understanding through implication instead of through direct communication. On Sawako's end, because of incomplete information, she thinks she understands what they're going through, that because of her, they're hurting, and therefore isolates herself, falling back on the belief that if people involve themselves with her, they'll get hurt. Sawako eventually reaches the conclusion that she still wants to be with them even if it hurts them, and that is what is eating away at her, because she believes herself to be selfish for wanting that. Despite all the kindness she's received, she's still stuck in the mindset that she isn't worth the risk. She's unable to see it from a broader perspective because she's been isolating herself. It takes Kazehaya to sit down and have a proper conversation with her to give her the perspective she needs by flipping the narrative.
逆の立場だったらどうだった？俺とか矢野や吉田がさ、自分と関わったら株が落ちるって思って黒沼から遠ざかんの。
やだ、一緒にいたい。
The arc develops the relationship between Sawako, Ayane, and Chizuru, building a deeper bond by going through hardship and coming out stronger on the other side. We get to learn more about them through the musings and conversations they have with each other while developing other relationships as well. Now, I'm not saying that you have to take this scene in Honey Lemon Soda and turn it into a whole drama. It's fine, there isn't anything wrong with it per se. But it comes off as a bit rushed, partly because Ishimori herself is feeling rushed, but coming from Kimi ni Todoke, it just feels like weak sauce. I mean, we came from a war. We fought hard for this friendship against the powers that be, and we came out of it with a better understanding of all the characters involved. Up to this point, we still don't really know that much about Ayumi beyond that she's a cheerful, friendly person and that she has a crush on Satoru. I want to see more of Ayumi and Ishimori developing their friendship, finding the things they have in common, standing up for each other, and learning about their lives up until this point. I want you to keep in mind her interactions with Ayumi have been fairly minimal and group-based, meaning she hasn't had much one-on-one time with her to really get to know her, and most of the time up until this point, the beginning of episode 3, has been spent developing her relationship with Miura. The thing is, Honey Lemon Soda doesn't seem interested in developing Ayumi as a character. She at least has more of a personality than the other girls in class, but her bond with Ishimori isn't as deep as the show would have you believe. It even acknowledges in-universe that she was kind of forgotten about at one point. Having a squad to back you up, hype you up, and comfort you is a big part of female friendships, a way of having female solidarity, and this is what I thought it was going to do when Ayumi shows up to take Ishimori to the festival. Ishimori has been stuck in her own head about Serena and Miura, and having someone who will be on her side to give her some perspective and a pep talk is exactly what she needs. But what does it do the second they get there? Remove Ayumi from the equation. Get her out of the way so she can spend more time with Miura. Ayumi feels like an afterthought, and once Serena is introduced into the mix, as refreshing as she is being non-antagonistic, her role still functions as a wedge between Ishimori and Miura. Kimi ni Todoke does the legwork of establishing Sawako's close bond with her friends before it starts developing the romance aspects. In this arc, Kazehaya states that it can't be him to resolve everything because he understands the importance of them dealing with it themselves for the sake of their friendship.
俺じゃダメだから。あいつらじゃないと意味ねえから。
On its own, switching seats is a common enough trope that it wouldn't be fair to say Honey Lemon Soda is copying Kimi ni Todoke. But as long as we're comparing similar elements, it's worth looking at how each series utilizes the concept. Honey Lemon Soda takes the opportunity to showcase Ishimori's kindness and self-sacrificial nature, and as luck would have it, this lands her a seat next to Miura. By her sitting next to him, she can utilize his soft power to make connections with the rest of the class. It lays another brick in the good things are allowed to happen to me wall to build her confidence in interacting with people. In Kimi ni Todoke, it's the culmination of how Sawako's actions have affected others as her communication attempts pay off. It's the people who have grown to care for her by learning who she is, letting her know that she's cared for and that they want to be around her, while also setting an example to the rest of the class to stop treating her like she's radioactive and see her as a person. The show has been putting in small scenes to show how people feel about sitting next to her or in her seat. Sawako attempts to rectify their misconceptions, but ends up in failure. We can tell that it still hurts, but we see her optimism and forward-looking attitude.
次があるよ。
Again, when drawing seats, they treat her like she's this concept with no feelings, because they don't care that she's right there and can hear everything they're saying. As hurtful as it is, she still has faith that even if it's not now, if she can work hard, she can get to the point where people will be glad to sit next to her. By switching with Ayumi, Ishimori just happens to get a seat next to the two most popular boys in class, and any attention she gets from this is being filtered through Miura and how he interacts with her. Miura isn't leading by example by genuinely liking to be around Ishimori because of who she is. For all we know by this point, the only reason he has anything to do with her is because of her social status. Now, again, these scenes are functioning in slightly different ways. They aren't necessarily trying to do the same thing. For Honey Lemon Soda, it's more a setup for things to happen down the line. Miura uses his status to introduce Ishimori to the rest of the class as a way for her to begin socializing. She's struggled to have an in, and so he's giving her that opportunity. In theory, I want you to pay attention to the differences between these two scenes.
19の人、取っ替えて。やった。黒沼の隣だ。
石森さんって俺らみたいなのに好意的だよね。
思った。こういうの授業の邪魔になって迷惑。やっぱり私そう見えるんだ。
むしろ真逆。これは仮の姿だから。実はすげえから仲良くしたらいいことあるかも。
おお、仲良くするよ。
In Kimi ni Todoke, the characters never state out loud what it is they're thinking or trying to do, because it's obvious from their actions. Kazehaya, in the midst of everyone scrambling to find a seat that isn't next to Sawako, volunteers to switch with them and moves his desk next to hers. Him saying this implies to Sawako, I will stand up for you when no one else will, and to everyone else, stop being stupid and mean. Ayane, tossing the paper away and wordlessly moving her desk in front of Sawako's, tells us that she also finds this stupid. Chizuru being upset that she can't be in a seat directly next to her and settling for the next best spot shows us that she wants to participate and is frustrated she can't do so in the way she wants. This is our introduction to Sanada, who isn't really paying attention to the atmosphere of the class and has his own agenda, not caring about Sawako's supposed powers. Their actions tell us everything we need to know without them having to explain it verbally. Contrast this with Miura stating that he's rehabilitating Ishimori, which, side note, is it not incredibly humiliating to have it announced to the entire class that you're a charity project? Just me? Or declaring to the class that, no guys, she's cool, trust me bro. To the way the class narrates facts to the audience. And there's this whole interaction where they're greeting her and she doesn't know how to react, which is happening in the middle of class, by the way. Like, guys, do we really have to do this right now? Why is the teacher not saying anything? The characters have absolutely no filter and say whatever is most plot relevant to Ishimori with seemingly no social consequences for what's being said, even though it feels like there should be, which provides a sense of secondhand embarrassment for the audience. The entire point of this exchange is to get Ishimori to think, I really don't know that much about Miura. Maybe I should try and find out more. The enigma Miura Kai. Another similar element that the two series have is looking through yearbooks that introduces the popular girl. In Kimi ni Todoke, we actually get to learn more about who Kazehaya is and his connection to the other characters. We learn about his interest in baseball, how both he and Sanada were in it together, how Sanada still does baseball and Kazehaya stopped, and how that affected the coach. We learn that Sanada is pragmatic in things like haircuts, but is also a bit indignant at them saying that he hasn't changed much. In Honey Lemon Soda, we don't learn anything about the characters that are being talked about in the yearbooks. The most we learn is who was in what class when, and that Miura has always been a bit deadpan. We could introduce Serina as Miura's ex now, but we have to save that piece of information until the most dramatic timing to reveal that. We could be characterizing Miura's friend group. Why is he friends with them? Miura and Takamine appear to have more of a history with each other, which is a mystery that it seems to be building. But what about Satoru? Was he friends with Ayumi before Miura, or the other way around? We know Ayumi wasn't involved until third year of middle school, so how did they become the clique they are today? Giving us details like that help ground the characters together, giving them a clearer history. Here's a question. Why do the other characters care so much about Miura's love life? Like, individually, as a person. They're constantly hung up on how Miura and Serena used to date and should get back together. Why did you break up? Why don't you start dating again? I bet they will, it's only a matter of time. What do you mean you turned her down? And it's not for the purpose of exploring the relationship between the two or to comment on how people get too invested in other people's relationships. It is purely to be the reason Ishimori holds back and to emphasize how unlikely it is for Miura to want to be with Ishimori. Can you tell me anything about these characters? What is their archetype? What interests do they have? We aren't getting any specific characterization of these characters other than I guess they like to gossip. Like, Ishimori wants to connect with her classmates, and I want to care about the people she wants to connect with. But it doesn't seem like Ishimori cares about who they are, just that they're different from her bullies as this nebulous idea of what nice classmates are like. They're not characters, they're tools. They exist to tell you who's the hottest character in school, to react to whatever the main characters are doing. None of them have a meaningful relationship with Ishimori or Miura. They're used to comment on the progress of their relationship as it relates to their reputation in school. They don't have thoughts or desires of their own. Something that I do like about its utilization of the yearbooks. It brings up the idea of not wanting people to worry about you when you start being negative about yourself. That it's difficult to deal with people's sympathy. That complicated feeling of you're hurting and in pain, and yet you don't want to burden others with that you don't want them suffering because of you. It's an obstacle for Ishimori connecting with her classmates because of the touchy subject. They don't want to make Ishimori uncomfortable by making her relive memories that were painful for her, and they don't know how to deal with someone who has been through that, and are therefore treading carefully. But at the same time, Ishimori wants to connect with them despite this, and she has yet to make a deep enough connection with someone to be able to be vulnerable about her time in middle school, because she hasn't fully healed from it. She sees her past as an obstacle, and that bringing it up makes other people uncomfortable, which she doesn't want to do. She doesn't have a space or anyone to talk to about her trauma, and so she would just rather avoid it altogether. I want to take a step back to take a slightly broader look at how each series conveys popularity. Even though Kazehaya and Miura are both popular, that is where the similarities end. Not only are their personalities the complete opposite, the way in which they're popular is also different. Kazehaya is by nature an outgoing person, is easy to talk to, cheerful, and treats everyone with the same level of kindness no matter who they are. He attracts people to him through how he acts and his friendly demeanor. Miura is lauded for his looks, his aloof attitude presenting a too cool for school vibe that people seem to admire. People are constantly demanding his attention, and it seems he actively wants to get away from it. The only person who comments on Kazehaya's popularity is Sawako, because she admires his ability to draw a crowd and get along with everyone, and is something she aspires to. For everyone else, they don't need to talk about how popular he is, because they're too busy actually talking to him. And when they talk to him, they're talking about things like homework, messing around, or lending CDs to each other. And this brings us to the biggest difference between the two shows: the dialogue. The way Honey Lemon Soda delivers information through dialogue is done in a specific way that feels like it exacerbates the problem of telling instead of showing. We need to show that Miura is popular. Let's have Ishimori overhear girls fangirling over how cool he is. She overhears girls talking about how every girl has a crush on Miura phase. She witnesses classmates constantly asking for his location so they can hang around him. How do we show that Serena is popular? Let's have characters talk about how pretty and cool she is and have Ishimori overhear it. We need to amplify Ishimori's insecurities about Serena. How do we do that? We have Ishimori overhear Miura and his friends theorizing about why he and Serena broke up. It's almost as if Ishimori is asking a silent question, then the characters have a conversation about it, and by her overhearing it, is able to mull it over. It's also used to move plot points forward. How do we get Miura to start to see Ishimori as a potential partner instead of just a pet to feed and take care of, but not as the owner as the foster parent? We have him overhear some girls saying that there's no way he'd be into her romantically because she's so totally not his type. These conversations exist to give her food for thought, to amplify her anxiety, or to exposit about other characters. We never learn anything about them by the things they talk about because it's always about Miura, Ishimori, or Serena. The conversations feel manufactured around Ishimori feeling specific emotions, and not because these characters would be saying these things naturally. Generally, you want every piece of dialogue to serve the story in some way, whether that's learning about a character, creating or resolving tension, moving the plot forward, or imbuing subtext to serve the themes of the story. Most of the information we get is through the dialogue. It doesn't make use of the visual medium to give us information we otherwise wouldn't have through dialogue. We, of course, want each scene to have some sort of function, be that to advance the plot or learn about the characters. This would be the author's goal for the scene, or the meta goal. This runs in conjunction with character motivation. You need the character motivation to be believable in order to get invested in them and immersed into the story. These character goals apply to the conversations they have as well. They are communicating for some sort of purpose. This is the in-universe reason things are happening. If the meta goal for the scene and the character's goal are at all misaligned, it can break suspension of disbelief. You lose all believability if you can see where the strings are attached. Now, I'm not saying that you should never deliver exposition in this way. Kimi ni Todoke is not adverse to utilizing this method. What you need is for there to be a believable reason these characters would be having these conversations in the first place. And when it is the only way you deliver information, it gets old fast. For a more concrete example of how this utilization of characters plays out, let's talk about the school trip arc. The first thing of note is the establishment of a romantic spot on the trail where you can see a heart shape in the tree line. We'll put a pin in that. Throughout the series, Miura has been giving Ishimori very mixed messages. He's nice to her, but also berates her, is warm one minute, cold the next, and is overall very hard to read. This bleeds into the storytelling as well. Miura is pretty closed off to everyone, and so the series uses how much information he's willing to share as a measuring stick for how special you are to him, and so it tries to create drama around this aspect. When Ishimori has secret information, it means she might be special to him. If she doesn't, she's not. Which brings us to the hat. Miura wears hats because he gets bedhead, and this is something he tells Ishimori and no one else prior to the expedition. During the trip, we get probably the most natural-sounding discussion of Miura's popularity.
結局カイのこと好きになってはい絶望みたいな叶わぬ恋みたいな
Like I said, not a bad thing inherently, but an example nonetheless, which has Ishimori feeling insecure about her standing with Miura, especially because he's currently acting cold towards her. Marin steals his hat for attention, which then has the characters bring up his hat situation, saying that she could keep the hat since he has so many, prompting them to ponder why. Ishimori is about to answer, which triggers Miura to keep her quiet about the reason by covering her mouth. It would be easy enough to have Miura himself tell her to keep the hat, but Miura never says anything himself, so other characters end up having to explain his behavior. I guess because we're trying to keep his motives mysterious. The enigma Miura Kai. Ishimori is wondering if this means anything, so now we need to crush her hopes and dreams. In order to do this, we must reintroduce the heart in the tree line so that we can emphasize the fact that Miura has done romantic things with other girls to make Ishimori believe she isn't special after all. How is this accomplished?
なあなあ、女子たちあれ何必死に上見てんの？
ああ、おまじないみたいなやつだよ。
A random classmate comes up to innocently ask them about it. Why is he asking them specifically and not the girls in question? Why does he care? Who knows? The only reason he's here is to get to this conclusion.
だってかい女子と二人でそういう素敵スポット行ったことあるしな。
Because Ishimori and Miura won't ask questions or divulge any information respectively, the other characters have to do the heavy lifting to explain things to the audience, and so the dialogue comes across as very expository.
もらっていいんじゃね？貝いっぱい持ってるから。中学から被ってるもんな。
Then we move on to the main conflict of the arc. The terrain begins to get difficult, and then it starts to rain, which has the class start to run for shelter. Miuta stops them to keep them from getting separated, and one of the boys asks why he's being so serious. It's not like we're lost, only to have Ishimori seemingly out of nowhere confirm that we are indeed lost.
別に迷ってるわけでもないしよくない？ねえ、石森ちゃん。
迷ったかもしれません。
Are we though? The most we get is that something feels a bit off about the trail.
なんかどんどん道険しくなってない？
Oh no, it's getting steep. Guys, I think we might be lost. I feel like we're missing a step in between something feels off and we are most certainly definitely lost. There's no agonizing over pathways on the map or being confused. Ishimori runs away and Miuta tries to comfort her, and then she pushes him away because she sees the bridge. There really isn't any problem-solving happening. The bridge just happens to be in her line of sight, so as soon as we have even a small amount of tension, it's cut short by the situation basically already being resolved. To give an idea of what the pace is like, there's 1 minute of build-up to the cliffhanger of being lost at the end of episode 3, and 2 minutes into the next episode, not counting the opening, we find the bridge. There's barely any time to feel the full weight of the situation. And then there's the shot direction. The impact of finding the heart is undercut by the shot direction being so confusing, you can't even tell that that's what happened. Ishimori is talking to Miuta and thinking about how he's laughing before she looks at him. The way the shot is, and given the context, you could be forgiven for thinking she's looking at Miuta and completely miss the heart shape in the tree line. Your eye was already primed to be focusing on Miuta instead, especially because the trees are not in focus, not helped by the slow pan up. And if you don't have it in your mind that Ishimori is looking at anything other than Miuta, you would think that she's reacting to his smile. Miuta doesn't give any visual indication that he noticed what she was looking at, so him crediting Ishimori for finding the heart feels strange. I certainly missed that it was Ishimori who saw it on first viewing, so it was weird to me that the class was thanking Ishimori for it. This is the most egregious example of poor shot composition and layout, and in the rest of the series, there's nothing to this extent of not being able to tell what's happening. I feel like now is a good time to bring up the manga. This particular plotline happens pretty much beat for beat the same in the manga. Besides better art and composition, the only thing missing besides when the teacher reunites with them after the fact is a shot of Miuta noticing what it is that Ishimori is looking at. And even in the manga, it's not super clear that this is what's happening, but at least it's there. But the way in which things happen is essentially the same. And this is what I mean by the manga still has the core storytelling issues as the anime. Despite all the cut content that gives more context for everything as well as some important emotional beats, adding that in doesn't fix the dialogue issues. It doesn't fix the poor tension and conflict resolution. It doesn't fix bending the story and characters around making Ishimori feel specific emotions. I just wanted to bring this up as an example of the same problems across both mediums with the minimum amount of cuts and changes to give some clarification on my thoughts on the manga. While, yes, the manga is technically better, it still falls short in the areas that I would engage with the most. The two series take differing approaches to overall structure. Honey Lemon Soda has 2 areas of development that it's working with. We have Ishimori's inner struggle that relates to her mindset and her growth as a person apart from Miuta. Then we have the romance aspects, the development of their relationship. It appears to struggle with juggling the two halves and interweaving them in a cohesive way where each action leads into the next. Because of the way plot points are progressed, everything is pulled in the direction by whatever is being overheard. Despite the moment-to-moment beats feeling slowly paced, the rate at which events happen is actually quite fast, and so it feels as if we're speedrunning the making friends plot so we can get to the juicy romance. I mean, chop chop, gotta get them together by the end of the season. It flip-flops between elements, and instead of seamlessly blending the two sides together, it distracts itself from each plot and pretends like things are resolved, not giving the conflicts time to properly ferment. And when it's not doing that, the way it handles plot progression is so clunky and awkward it doesn't feel earned, or it's outright contradicting itself. Right after Takamine confronts Ishimori about if she's changed and that being next to Miura might hurt her, is when it's revealed that he and Serena dated in the past. It's trying to heighten the drama by delivering the final gut punch to a series of revelations, but all it does is distract you from Ishimori's personal struggles to focus on how he has an ex, or when she's conversing with Serena and puts herself down.
本当に鬱陶しいな。自分のこんなところが。
And then Miura and the tools interrupt this with another counterfeit resolution.
卑屈、劣等感、素直、勇気。
Which makes it about the romance and her courage to love Miura.
持ち続ける三浦君を好きでいる勇気。
But it doesn't address why she feels this way about herself. And so functionally, it again distracts you from the real underlying issue. It's like the story is toying with Ishimori's feelings by putting her in situations that make her feel like she may be special, and then she hears something that makes her insecure, like a cruel game of loves me not. Insecurity is not a bad trait to write with, but Ishimori doesn't actually work through it. The story just keeps feeding her opposing information back and forth, which makes her feel like she has no agency and therefore stagnant. One of the things the story attempts to grapple with is, will Miura leave Ishimori once she's able to handle herself in social situations, and will Ishimori be okay with him leaving her? In the game show scene in episode 6, she mentions that she always seems to be relying on Miura to help her.
どうして私いちいち自分のことを三浦君に委ねてるんだろう。
The situation turns uncomfortable, and we wonder, will Ishimori be able to stand up for herself? But then we switch it to make it about her insecurities about Serena.
ここにいるのがセリナちゃんだったらきっと三浦君飛んできたな。
What is the end goal here? In order to be by his side, she needs to be able to be fine without him, yet simultaneously, if he doesn't save her from situations like this, it's because he doesn't care about her in that way. Is it bad for her to rely on Miura or not? Like, I kind of get what it's trying to do. If you take out her comment about Serena, it could be that she's disappointed in herself for having to rely on him again, and so she strengthens her conviction to be able to stand up for herself, to become strong so that she can be by his side. It still feels a little convoluted, but at least it's not as contradictory as it currently is. Including the part about Serena muddles the message. If it was about her subconsciously falling into her habits of self-deprecation, that would be one thing, but it's not commented on. Making it about her insecurities turns Miura into the hero of the situation, which begs the question, are we supposed to take Miura saving her here as a good thing? It comes across as wanting to have its cake and eat it too. In Kimi ni Todoke, there is a clear sense of progression from her first friend in Kazehaya and slowly adding to her friend group as she takes on each challenge as they come, learning more and more about communication and friendships. Because Sawako's disposition is the way that it is, she needs time to build up friendships before she realizes what romance even is to her. It builds on the foundation by introducing new topics as they come up, new challenges for her to face and grow through. Sawako experiences things for herself and comes to her own conclusion. She listens to others with an open mind, but stays true to her convictions once she's thought them through, because she's given the time to do so. Kimi ni Todoke allows Sawako to walk through her thoughts at her own pace and builds each relationship slowly and methodically. I really feel that these characters care about each other because we know why the characters feel the way they do, where they're coming from. The themes are built into the character arcs. Honey Lemon Soda rushes through a lot of the development and struggles to deliver information in an organic, believable way, and doesn't spend the time to properly develop the conflicts. Despite touching on a lot of interesting topics, it doesn't explore them in depth to deliver the full power they have the potential to. It has a loose idea of what it wants the character arcs to be, but doesn't know how to execute it in a compelling way, and the result feels contrived. There's stuff hiding under the surface, and if it would be able to focus a bit more on specifics, it could reach that level of connectivity. The small problems with things like dialogue only need small tweaks, but left on their own, they compound upon each other to create a feeling of amateurity. It does have a core that resonates with a lot of people. I can certainly feel that sincerity behind it. There's a reason people love it so much. It just struggles to properly communicate its ideas in a compelling way to reach the parts of the audience that don't already relate to Ishimori. That's why it's important to keep in mind things like characterization through dialogue, keeping tabs of how you're delivering exposition, and jamming two competing ideas in the same scene, because they impact the delivery of the story in such a meaningful way. I would love to know your thoughts, what ideas you were able to pick up on in Honey Lemon Soda that you wish were explored a little more in depth, or what you feel like it actually does well. I really appreciate hearing all of your differing perspectives. There's still a lot more that could be discussed about Honey Lemon Soda, but to be honest, I'm a little burned out on it, and I'm excited to get to some other projects that I hope you'll stick around for. One of which being my webcomic, Echoes of Fireflies, which you can read over on Webtoon. I promise I haven't abandoned it. I've been wanting to get back to it. I just wanted to finish this video first. Thank you so much for all the love and support. It really means a lot. The imposter syndrome is real, and I've gained a lot of confidence to keep doing what I'm doing, so I really appreciate all of your feedback. Until next time. I wouldn't press rewind. Mitsuketa, I found you in a wonderful world, in a wonderful world. 何も怖くない君といれば never ever look back, back, back. Every day, every night, このままそばにいたい. I'm with you in a wonderful world, wonderful, wonderful world.